Hey, this is the Bo Benson Show. I'm glad to have you guys. If you want to subscribe and learn about Jehovah's Witnesses and cult groups and the New World Order and things of that nature, this is the perfect place for you. Because the more we talk about it, the less power they have. And remember, the power is in the people.
JW.org, we're very pleased that on May 16, 2023, Brother Shamil Hakimov was released from prison in Tajikistan after fulfilling his prison sentence. You might recall that he was first detained in February 2019. He spent over 4 years in prison for his faith. He plans to get some much-needed rest and is being helped to receive necessary medical care. We're very happy for you, Brother Hakimov. Your faithful endurance encourages all of us. Of course, we continue to keep close in mind the over 180 brothers and sisters who are still imprisoned for their faith.
You know, when you hear messages about people standing up for their faith and being arrested, it sounds like a good thing. But then when you start looking into it, when you look beyond the veil and you start paying attention to it, well, here's something I want to know about. What about the hundreds of elders who have been arrested because they would not give the information to police about the CSA issues that are seen within the organization? They're following God's orders too. Why are they not being praised and represented on the JW.org broadcast? That's because they don't want you to know this. They don't want people to talk about this. They don't want you to bring reproach on Jehovah's good name. Well, if Jehovah's name was so good, why are you hiding these things? That is the true question. That's the question that every single Jehovah's Witness ever existed should be asking. Why do we tell the elders to hide these records? Why do these blue files exist at the Kingdom Halls? Why does this blue file system exist at the headquarters? Why do we report it to the headquarters? Why do we not report it to police? Why do we tell the family to be silent or they will be excommunicated? They will be shunned. Why do we do those things? Those are the true questions that every member of Jehovah's Witnesses should be asking, but they never will.
Think about the thousands of elders that have been in court doing God's work, right? Defending the organization and their misuse of children. Well, there's so much more to this. And there's so much more you should know about this. Because when you pay attention to the organization and what it does, what it says, at first glance, you see something. But when you look deeper into the organization, you'll see something else. Something you didn't see before. Something that you don't notice unless you look deep. And when you look deep into the organization, you start to see patterns that you would never have noticed if you didn't do your research.
Every day in high school, my classmates would talk about sex.
They would just talk about, their boyfriends and girlfriends, what they did with them, over the weekend, what they're going to do.
They, of course, knew that I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses and that I wouldn't engage in premarital sex, but that did not stop them from pushing.
Guys would invade my personal space. Sometimes they would even try to, grab or touch me.
One day, a girl in class, she asked me to touch her inappropriately. Of course, I rejected her, but she even resorted to calling me names. She called me lame, and she said that I must be gay.
It seemed to be a game to them to try to break me and try to get me to do things with them. But the fact that I wouldn't give in, they thought it was fun or funny.
It got to the point where this became very physical. I had two classmates behind me that were pushing me. One classmate on each side of me, grabbing my arms and pushing me, trying to make me touch her. And I knew that it was time to get out of there.
Being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I was already very different in school, but I was also very shy. So at times I wanted to fit in with the crowd so I wouldn't have that attention on me. But I knew that this would displease Jehovah if I, went with the crowd and did what the other kids were doing.
So this is what I'm talking about. At first glance, you would think, wow, look at these young people, look at their high standards, look at these morals they're getting from the organization. But then we know what the elders do. We know what happens to young people in the organization. And it's funny how they're telling these kids, sharing these stories of these inappropriate behavior and how they need to get out and how they're standing up for what Jehovah wants and they're morally clean. And yet we know the problem the organization has. We know the thousands of reports of misuse that has gone on with the organization. And this is what I want to point out to you guys. When you look at the surface, you don't see the dirty and the grime. But when you look beyond the veil and you look beyond what they want you to see and you pay attention to what really goes on, you see that this is not the true face of the organization. And so I know that you, the audience, are aware of the issue with child problems and the way that they present themselves when out of relationships or out of marriage sex is completely unacceptable. But think about all the elders that have abused all those children. That too, not only is it the R word that we can't say, but it's child something abuse, and then what else? It's adultery, and it's sex out of marriage, obviously. But why do they not care? Why are they not saying anything about that? Why are they not condemning that? Think about those things. So there is another watchtower out there, folks, and it's in this movement. So Norway, Sweden, Finland, UK, Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, and now Tennessee are banning transgender affirming care for minors. Why? We hear how great it is. We hear how wonderful it is. We see the organizations are supporting it. Now, I know and you know that the front face of Watchtower says that they do not support this, that they're opposed of this, that this is not clean and this is not part of Jehovah's plan, right? So anyone can go look up on jw.org like I did and look up just gay, lesbian, and you'll see articles discussing their opinion and how it doesn't fall in line with Scripture. And they are obviously anti-LGBT, they are obviously anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-lesbian, right? And you would say that, and you would think that. But do you remember the videos that I showed you a few days ago where I told you and I showed you that this organization belongs to the United Nations and that they belong to an organization that is supporting this stuff? When you decide to unmask yourself and then pay attention to what is going on, you'll know why the organization known as Watchtower sends money to these people. It makes perfect sense when you realize what these people are.
Kinsey would be very happy with our culture today. His idea was that children are sexual from birth, that we're all inherently sexual creatures from cradle to grave. He believed that true happiness is found in a life of perverse sexual experimentation, no matter the age.
What came out is that his research was fraudulent.
Kinsey based his fraudulent conclusions on data he collected from convicted sex offenders and child molesters. His research was conducted in prisons, not everyday America. He also performed horrific sexual experiments on children, some under the age of 1. His most influential book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, contains an infamous chart called Table 34, which documents the orgasms of very young kids, including babies as young as 5 months old. But instead of suffering the consequences for his heinous actions, he was and still is celebrated by academia and Hollywood. His ideas form the foundation for sexual education in public schools today. How do we get from this to you can choose your own gender?
Okay, well, now we have another very important character, and his name was John Money.
John Money was a psychologist and professor at Johns Hopkins University. Gender ideology was his brainchild. In fact, he coined the terms gender identity and gender roles. And according to Money, babies are gender neutral at birth, and ultimately environment determines whether a person is a man or a woman.
Money was telling the world about his theory that a boy could be raised as a girl and do just fine, and vice versa.
And so Money tried out his theory on 2 young twin boys, the Reimer twins.
when the twins were 8 months old and they went to be circumcised, the first twin, whose name was Bruce, something went wrong with the machinery and his penis was burnt off. They stopped and didn't do a second circumcision on the other twin, as you might imagine. And the parents, of course, didn't know what to do. How are they going to raise this child?
John Money convinced Bruce's parents to transition him into a girl. Money also conducted sexually abusive experiments on the twins throughout their childhood, including forcing them to simulate sex acts on each other.
He reported up to the age of 10 that this was a complete success. Well, wasn't true.
The results were a disaster. Bruce could never fully accept his female identity. Eventually, his parents told him the truth, and he chose to transition back to a boy, taking the name David. As an adult, David spoke out about the abuse and the damage done to him by John Money.
The girls would do their things with their Barbies and things like that, and that wouldn't interest me. And things such as trucks and building forts and getting to the odd fist fight and climbing trees. That's the kind of stuff that I like, but it was unacceptable. So I'd never.
As a girl.
As a girl, I had no place to fit in.
The trauma that he and his brother and his entire family went through left deep scars. His brother died of an overdose when he was 38, and then David committed suicide.
Do you remember when I told you they're part of the UNDP 2003? Do you remember that? The reason why I'm showing this to you, this is a documentary called What is a Woman? And it refers to the trans movement. And it's talking about the origins, the people behind it, and it tells you information about it. This fight of misuse of children, we're not alone. There are millions of other people wanting to help us. And you should never forget that. Now, the reason why I'm telling you guys this clip that you just saw, that horrific clip of these physicians are being praised for abusing children. Remember, those organizations, those people are being financed by Watchtower. When I showed you that company that they joined, it is in their statement that they support these organizations. So when you see Watchtower telling you they're anti-gay, they're anti-trans, all these things, remember, what they say doesn't matter. What they do with their money does. Because what an organization does with their matter, or does with their, not their matter, does with their money is all that matters. So I want you to think about the history of this organization. Now, we don't know about these men, but we know 2 prior men that used to be on these roles, these governing body, were misusing children. 2 of them that we know of. And we know that these people have gone in court and have stated to the public that they appall abuse and that they do all the things they're supposed to do, right? Everything that the law requires. And I know and you know that the Pennsylvania investigation, we know thousands of other investigations that are going right now, that they are being slammed with abuse cases. And you just think that it's a coincidence that the United Nations is coming in there and trying to help them. And you think it's just a coincidence that the United Nations, the trans movement, are all trying to legalize children abuse? Because think about that. Think about those scientists. Think about what you saw. Those people are trying to normalize and trying to teach you that misusing children is okay. So when Watchtower tells you that they don't believe this, why are you believing them?
Now, I'm going to put it as plainly as I can. The United Nations, these organizations, and Watchtower all have one thing in common. They want to legalize the misuse of children. And the reason they want to do that is because they don't want to be held accountable for their actions. If they make it normal, then they don't have to pay for it. That is the reason why these organizations work together. They may have different ideas, but their end goal is all the same. All they want to do is misuse your children, hurt your children, and you should fight back. Do not sit on the sidelines. Do not be quiet. You stand up and you do what you need to do, no matter what it takes. Defend yourself and defend your children every means possible, in court, at home, at schools, on the internet. You do what you need to do, and you research what you need to research, and you pay attention to what you need to pay attention, because this is a war. We are at war with these people, and that war is going to go either way. They are a powerful and they are a well-financed organizations. But we, the people, can stand up to this, and you can say, no, you will not do this to my children. Look at Budweiser. Budweiser wanted to sell out our children. Now they're down, what, $32 billion in sales? Do not give your time, do not give your money. Anyone who supports misuse of children, you should excommunicate out of your life. Target, Budweiser, Watchtower, United Nations, Trans, any movement that wants to legalize the abuse of children does not deserve your time. You and I left Watchtower to fight what is evil and what is wrong against children. Don't forget that we have allies in other places as well who are fighting back, trying to save their communities too. This is a cancer that needs to be ripped out from our culture. And I do not stand against or have anything against anyone who is part of the LGBTQ community, but I do not support any kind of abusers of children, no matter what little verbiage you want to give yourself. And I support anyone who wants to fight this fight.
There is no such thing as a kids-friendly Pride event. Pride is about sex, sexuality, who I am attracted to, who I like to have sex with. As a same attracted person, I'm a lesbian. LGBT is about our sexualities. And the Pride was about marching for our rights. Where this and children goes together, I don't know, because children and sex should not be in the same sentence unless you're a PDF file. Parents who take in their kids to these parades, to these kids-friendly events, are complicit in a sexual child abuse of the children, including, of course, the performances and all the people who would not be able to keep the genitals to themselves. There is no such thing as a kids-friendly Pride event.
It takes a truly brave person to stand up to their community and to stand up for the rights of children, just like me, just like you. Never forget that. We have allies, and we need to work together, because we are at war with these people, and they want your children, and they will do anything to get them. Never forget that. Make sure you know who your enemy is, because I know who my enemy is, and I hope you do. The true enemy.
Illegal abuse. What's the quantity consumed that would make it illegal? If you're driving some vehicle and you're under the influence, what's the punishment if there is any punishment? You see, the answer to those questions really vary widely from country to country. In fact, even from state to state at times. So it's up to the secular governments to determine the penalties and to enforce them.